What will a mental health C&P examiner ask me when evaluating my PTSD claim? The very first thing that the examiner will probably explore is the stressor event. If you're not yet service-connected for PTSD and you're claiming PTSD and being evaluated for the first time, certainly the first part of the exam is going to be related to the stressor event. The VA stressor form that you filled out, the 21-0781, describing the event or events that you believe caused your current chronic mental health symptoms, that stressor event will be explored by the examiner. They're going to want to know, what did you experience? How did you feel? What is your memory of the event? Things like that. The next part of the exam is probably going to be related to your symptoms. What symptoms do you have? Do you have memories of the event? Do you have flashbacks? Do you re-experience it? Do you have nightmares? Do you have trouble sleeping? Are there triggers? Are there certain things that bring back the memory and cause a physical response? These are all things that can be caused by PTSD or other mental health conditions caused by a traumatic experience. The next thing the examiner is certainly going to ask you about is going to be your history of mental health treatment. Have you been diagnosed? Have you been treated? Do you take medication? Have you been prescribed medication in the past? If you're treated at the VA Medical Center, the examiner will certainly have access to those records. However, if you're treated privately and you have not provided those records, the examiner is certainly going to want to know what you've been treated, what your regimen of treatment has been, what medications you've taken, and if you continue to see that provider, and if the treatment helped, they're going to want to know, have you been to support groups, veteran support groups? There are many types of treatment. It may not necessarily be treatment by a psychologist or psychiatrist. You may be asked to fill out a VA self-assessment form. There are many tests, objective tests that can be provided by the examiner that you take that can actually provide some insight to the examiner about your symptoms, how they affect your life, screening tools to see if you have many of the common symptoms of PTSD. There are several tests that you might be asked to take. There are also malingering tests. A malingering test is a test to find out if you're over-reporting or exaggerating your symptoms. Malingering is basically a false or grossly exaggerated symptoms that are consciously produced for external incentives, meaning you're making up or exaggerating symptoms in order to get disability benefits. That's malingering. You absolutely need to be honest with the examiner. Do not exaggerate your symptoms, but also don't minimize your symptoms. Don't be tough in that examination and pretend that you're fine, you're okay. Another good thing to do is bring somebody with you to the examination. If you have a close friend or spouse who observes, has been able to see you before and after the stressor event and how you've changed, and certainly has been able to observe your symptoms externally, because sometimes you don't have insight into how that stressful event has caused you to change. You may not recognize some of the symptoms that you have because you live inside your head, right? But somebody that lives with you, that is with you all the time, may observe behavior that you didn't have before. Avoidance, staying away from people, being hypervigilant, not trusting people. They may observe these changes in you, and they may observe things that you don't even recognize. So it sometimes is helpful to bring somebody with you to the exam. Now, the examiner may not let that person into the exam, but they may. I'd say it's about 50-50. So those are some things that the examiner is going to ask you when you claim PTSD. Many veterans want to know, well, what's going to happen after the C&P exam? When am I going to get my decision? Certainly, that examiner is going to provide their VA medical opinion to the rater along with their DBQ assessment, and that rater is going to look at that assessment, and they're usually going to determine, based on that assessment, whether or not you're service-connected for a mental health condition caused by a traumatic event and what your rating is. So basically, the rater is just going to follow exactly what the examiner said, determine your rating based on the symptoms reported by the examiner, and either service connect you or not based on the VA medical opinion provided by the C&P examiner. So that's what to expect. Those are some of the things that you might be asked in a C&P examination for PTSD. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you.
The information contained in this video is informational and not professional advice. Rely on it at your own risk and see a qualified medical or other professional to discuss individual circumstances and